Firas Zahabi. This is a friendly rebuttal to your video about what is fitness. I saw you on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about your 70 to 85% training range, which I love. We'll talk about that later. And the big issue that a lot of CrossFitters have with you is your idea that fatigue seeking is bad. And the third thing, the major thing, is that you argue that CrossFitters, the winner of the CrossFit Games, is not the fittest man or woman on earth. So I'm going to talk about those things today. My name is Fritz Nugent, and I am a strength and conditioning coach. I coach track and field at the Division I level for 3 seasons at University of Illinois in Champaign. I have my CSCS through the NSCA, a Master of Science degree in Sport Conditioning Performance, my USAW weightlifting certification, and I have also been a CrossFit coach for the last 5.5 years. And I have my Level 3 CrossFit certification, which makes me a unique person to speak on this issue, because it sounds like you're coming from a strength and conditioning perspective. And I know that perspective. I started out in that world. I spent 5 years training and coaching that world before I moved into the CrossFit realm. And then I adopted some of the CrossFit principles, and I can understand both sides, and I can communicate between the two languages to come to hopefully better understanding for anyone who's listening, and also for you if you're watching this video. So yeah, once again, I'm gonna keep it friendly. I'm not attacking you. I just want to discuss your points and explain them, and hopefully you can understand where the CrossFitters are coming from and where these ideas come from, because they're very well explained by Greg Glassman, a lot of his disciples, if you will. So let's go right into fatigue seeking. And so basically you say that fatigue seeking is bad, especially with Olympic lifts. And I'm going to argue that everything in training is fatigue seeking, and it's specific to the sport. So yes, it may get ugly when someone performs 30 clean and jerks for time in the CrossFit workout grace, but there is also good ways to train for grace. That's the first thing. We'll get onto that later. Second thing, if you watch an Olympic 1500 meter final, their running technique is very good for the first 3 laps of the race. Then the wheels start to fall off. If you watch that last 200 to 300 meters, it is a shit show. Same with watching a marathon final. It's not pretty. That's because the sport itself is fatigue seeking, right? So you need to train in that realm as well. Not at 100%, right? I agree with you there. 70 to 85% is a good range for most training. But you know, you got to touch 90, 95, or 99, as you say, every once in a while to make sure that your body is capable of going there and that it's not foreign. Because if you hit those zones in competition and you don't hit them in practice, you may fall apart. You know, you'll feel things you've never felt before. And you want to feel things in practice that when you compete, you've been there before and you can push beyond where you've been. So CrossFit likes to use the analogy of target shooting to explain why they allow their technique to falter in Olympic lifting. And I'll get back to this. I want to kind of talk about Olympic lifting versus CrossFit, right? So Olympic lifting, you're saying that you should approach every rep as a set, and that's a mental approach, a mental strategy to executing technically precisely, so that each rep is an opportunity to improve your technique and grow. And you can do this between the 70 to 85% range. Most people can. Once you get into 90, 95, sometimes it gets ugly. You'll make more mistakes because the weight demands it. That's Olympic lifting. They have to be very, very strong, right? Maximally strong and fast when they're up on that platform at the world level. However, there is an element of fatigue there, neuromuscular fatigue, right? So even when they're training for those high-level competitions, they're not training to the level of fatigue, metabolic fatigue that a CrossFit is training, but they are definitely training for neuromuscular fatigue, because if there's a couple lifters left at very high weights and they're jumping kilo for kilo, and you have to go in after hitting 5 kilos heavier than you've ever, clean and jerked in your entire life, and then your opponent hits a kilo heavier than you, and you have one more attempt, and you have to step on the platform and hit 1 more kilo than that, with 2 minutes rest in between those lifts, that's crazy amount of neuromuscular and CNS, central nervous system stress. So to say that Olympic lifting does not seek fatigue, that may be true, but it does produce fatigue. Fatigue finds you, whether you like it or not, when you are training to work and push your body, your physiological and biological systems to the edge, right? So back to the target analogy. CrossFit, let's say with technique, is like shooting a pistol at a target 30 feet away. If I'm trying to shoot as fast as possible, but also accurately as possible, if I shoot the target and I hit that bullseye 10 times in a row, perfect. I shot too slowly, I could have shot faster. But if I shoot so fast that I only hit 5 and I miss 5, I shot too fast. My form was, a little bit off. So in the middle is the happy medium. 7 to 8 shots within that ring out of 10 is where you want to be. And that's what Greg Glassman and a lot of the CrossFit coaches recommend as well. In the sport of fitness, which is CrossFit, right? You have to be able to execute technically well at a high level of fatigue. And so therefore, when you're coaching, you're watching these athletes move, you want them to have technique that's acceptable, 80 to 90% of their best, right? In extreme cases, you might allow them to fall off to 70 to 80%. But that's, once again, in a competition, when they are being maximally pushed. At the end of the competition, when they really need to dig, just like the end of an Olympic 1500 meter final where the wheels are falling off these runners and they look like they're going to break something, and some of them do, may not break things, pull things, right? So it's completely necessary to seek fatigue in CrossFit across all different tasks and all energy systems. And I'll talk about this more in a moment. Okay, so why is the man and woman who win the CrossFit Games crowned the fittest on earth, and you disagree that they are? I will disagree with you strongly, and here's why. You state the said principle a little bit and talk about the deadlift analogy with the vertical jump going down between the groups. The said principle is, as you stated, specific adaptations to impose demands. So with your jiu-jitsu example, yes, you take a CrossFitter or a cyclist and you put them on the mat with a jiu-jitsu athlete, the jiu-jitsu athlete is going to eat them alive. But if you take the jiu-jitsu athlete and have them train neutral ground tests, let's say deadlift, back squat, clean, sprint, row, swim, target shooting, whatever you want. Most of the tasks are going to be won by the CrossFitter because they train broad. And as you stated, fitness is non-specific. It's general, right? VO2 max, or metabolic specificity, is specific to the task at hand. That's why Lance Armstrong can do amazing things on a bike and still go and run a pretty decent marathon. But is he going to be competing at the top and running a 2:10 marathon? No. But he's still going to be running a respectable time. I think he ran 2:40 something, which is still faster than a high percentage of the normal population. So I like to explain fitness as hardware and software, right? Hardware is your physiological and your biological adaptations that you get from training. So you're training your energy systems, you're getting responses to your cardiovascular system, you're getting muscular responses, you're getting nervous system responses. And then when you couple that engine with different tasks, which are, cognitive and neuromuscular, depending on the difficulty and complexity of the task, you get fitness. So is a jiu-jitsu athlete as fit as a CrossFitter? Not in the sense of a general definition of fitness, no. Are they a better jiu-jitsu athlete and have fitness specific to jiu-jitsu? Yes, absolutely. They have lungs and metabolic capacity and myelin sheaths thick enough in all of those motor patterns to keep them fatigue resistant on the mat, right, when they're rolling. But once again, in every other task outside of the mat, a jiu-jitsu athlete will most likely get beat by a high-level CrossFitter. All right, now I'd like to rebuttal your said principle analogy with the deadlift and the vertical jump group. So you have a group that deadlifts and a group that doesn't deadlift, and you test a vertical jump at the end of the exercise study, and the group that deadlifted had lower vertical jump. All right, so specific adaptation to pose demands. Once again, the adaptations you get from heavy, slow deadlifting, like you said, what did you say? Lifting like a not a dump truck, something like that. You're recruiting heavily type 2 fast twitch muscles, right? But it's not, the speed is too slow to have a specific effect on the vertical jump, right? However, you can take a deadlift and you can add a band to the bar and really focus on driving that bar off the ground with speed, and I guarantee you're going to have an increase in vertical jump. So there's a lot of cross-pollination between movements, right? Back squat, when people's back squats go up, oftentimes their Olympic lifts will go up. Clean jerk goes up, snatch goes up. Other accessory movement numbers will go up when back squat goes up, as well as deadlift. Deadlift will go up and back squat goes up sometimes if you're not at the high level of deadlift capacity. When your Olympic lifts go up, your grace time will go down, because if my clean and jerk was 225 and I trained for a year and a half and it goes up to 275, that 135-pound barbell for grace now feels much lighter, and I'm going to be able to execute better technique under less fatigue and perform that task faster, right? Jumping and sprinting, of course, have mutually synergistic adaptations, and running, jump roping, other conditioning type demands have a positive effect on fighting. So that will be the explanation that training for CrossFit is not going to necessarily make you poor at anything. Really, everything somewhat affects everything else positively until you get to the far end of the spectrum where you really want to be good at one thing and you want to specialize in one thing. Then you really need to focus on that one thing. Anything extra outside of that realm is going to take away from that, right? But if you want to be fit, the fittest person on earth, you have to be a generalist. And generalists are not tested specifically, right? They're tested in a number of ways. You can test them in random ways, and they're still going to come out ahead on most of those tasks, if not all of those tasks, depending on the caliber of CrossFit athlete that we're talking about here. As the hardware improves, as the physiological and biological systems and processes improve, it allows the software, right, the technical programs, Olympic lifting, gymnastics, running, sprinting, jumping, what else? Rowing, shooting, to improve. I want to end with 70-80% range for training. Rate of perceived exertion is great. I really like that, and I agree with it. I think a lot of CrossFitters get it wrong when they try to hammer every single day. You know, they're young and they just want to, you know, juggle blood and fire, and it's a short-lived existence. I think focusing in that 70-85% range and really focusing on technical execution, you know, within that 70-85% of acceptable technique is the best way for CrossFitters to train. And once again, sometimes, like you said you do, touching on those 90, 95 to 99% of maximal capacity range. So thanks for listening. I hope I came off as respectful. Take care.